In this video, we are going to talk about the pattern of the CAT. Now, I'm sure a lot of you would be knowing what exactly happens at the CAT, but to just give you a recap, there are three sections into which CAT is broadly divided. The first section is the verbal ability and reading comprehension section, which is popularly known as the English section. The second section is the data interpretation and the logical reasoning section, which is popularly known as the DILR section or the logic section. And the third section is the quantitative ability section or the QA section, which is popularly known as the math section. Now, what happens in these three sections is that you will have questions that will expect you to know the concepts that you would have learned till your 10th standard. So you're not really expected to learn advanced English, you're not expected to know the advanced puzzle solving types, or you're not really expected to know advanced math. So whatever you have learned till your 10th standard, that is going to be good enough if it were for you to crack the CAT. Now, what happens inside these individual sections? So just to give you what happens inside the VARC section, you will typically have 24 questions, as has been the case for the last 3 years now. And out of these 24 questions, there will be 16 questions which will be based on reading comprehension passages. Meaning that you will have one passage which will be roughly 400 to 500 words in most cases, and that will be followed by 4 questions. Now you are supposed to answer these 4 questions using the data that has been present in the passage, and you are not supposed to bring any external information to the table. This is followed by 8 questions which are from the verbal ability part. Now these 8 questions are again divided into smaller parts. There have been broadly 4 question types that have appeared at the CAT over the last 3 years now. And these question types are jumbled paragraphs, wherein you will be given 4 statements and you will have to rearrange them and figure out what the correct order should be if they were to be arranged in the form of a paragraph. The second question type from verbal ability is the odd sentence out, which is the extension of the jumbled paragraph question type. In this question type, what you are expected to do is figure out which one out of the 4 statements that are given to you is the odd sentence out. The remaining 3 sentences, you would be able to arrange them to form a paragraph, and the last sentence that is there will be the odd one out. You have to figure out which is the one that does not fit in the context of that formed paragraph. The third question type that you can see in the verbal ability section is going to be the paragraph summary question type. In this question type, what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to figure out which of the given 4 summaries will be an apt summarization of the paragraph that would have been given to you. So typically the paragraph will have 4 or 5 sentences in it, and it will be followed by 4 alternative summaries. You have to figure out which is the one that is the best summarization of the paragraph. The last question type that has been recently appearing at the CAT is the question type wherein you will be given a statement and there will be a paragraph in which there will be 4 blanks that will be present. You have to figure out which of these blanks will house that statement that was given to you. And in that case, you have to figure out what is the flow of the paragraph and where does the statement stand in that particular context. Now these account for 24 questions of the total of 66 questions that you are expected to find at the CAT. Now moving on to the second section, we are looking at the data interpretation and the logical reasoning section. Now in this section, what happens is you will most probably be given 5 sets, wherein each set will have some information that will be given to you. It could be a gameplay, it could be a chart, it could be a table, it could be a set theory based question, and so on and so forth. And that data will be followed by 4 questions, the answers to which you will have to figure out by using the data in that question. Now broadly we divide it into 2 areas, data interpretation and logical reasoning. Data interpretation are typically the questions which expect you to solve something, which means you need to calculate something. It could be in the form of tables, bar graphs, line charts, pie charts, or numerical data based questions. The second question type is the logical reasoning bit, wherein you are not expected to calculate something, but you are just being expected to put certain things into order and make sure that you are able to figure out which one comes before the other one, and so on and so forth. Now these question types will primarily involve you making some arrangements, be it in the form of a linear arrangement, a matrix arrangement, or a circular arrangement. Now all these question types are equally probable when it comes to the CAT, and practically speaking there isn't a lot of difference between the data interpretation and the logical reasoning part. Now that is the second section. Typically what we have seen in DILR is that we are going to get 20 questions which are again split into 5 sets of 4 questions each. Now moving on to the third section, which is the quantitative ability section or the math section. In this section, you will find 22 questions which are standalone questions, independent of each other. Meaning that your first question could be from algebra, your second question could be from modern math, your third question could be from arithmetic, your fourth question could again be from algebra, and so on and so forth. Typically what happens in these questions is that you will have a majority of questions from algebra and arithmetic, as has been seen over the past few years now. If we were to split the entire section or those 22 questions that you can see at the quantitative ability part, you will see that roughly 13 to 14 questions will be from arithmetic and algebra. Now that will amount to 60 to 65% of the test, and that gives you an edge, especially if you are good at these two areas. Broadly speaking, there are 5 major areas that are tested when it comes to the QA section, and these 5 areas are arithmetic, which will include the basics of averages, percentages and ratios, and there are other topics that are in alignment with these 3 concepts. Now these topics could be topics like time, speed, distance, simple interest and compound interest, proportion, variation, weighted averages, time and work, and so on and so forth. Moving on to the algebra part, you can have a look at the algebra bit, wherein you will have linear equations, quadratic equations, polynomials, graphs, functions, and so on. That is followed by the geometry bit, wherein you will be able to see questions from lines, angles, triangles, polygons, quadrilaterals, circles, 3-dimensional geometry, trigonometry, and so on. Similarly, you will have questions from number theory, which might expect you to know the classification of numbers, divisibility tests, LCM, HCF, base systems, factorials, division, and so on. And the last part is modern math, wherein you will be able to see questions mostly from permutations and combinations, probability, set theory, and so on. Now these will form your quantitative ability part. Now that we have understood that there are 24 questions in the VARC section, 20 questions in the DILR section, and 22 questions in the QA section, we know that there are 66 questions that exist. Now at the CAT, what you are expected to do is, you are expected to go through these sections in the order in which I have mentioned them. Meaning that you will get 40 minutes to solve the VARC section. After that, your VARC section will no longer be accessible and you will have to move on to the DILR section. Now that will go on for another 40 minutes, and then you will have to move on to the quantitative ability section, which will again go on for 40 minutes. Now if you look at it, this essentially means that you are solving 3 tests of 40 minutes each, one after the other. Even if you finish a particular section early, you will not be able to go to the previous or the next section. Similarly, if you again do something and you want to go back and alter it when you are in some other section, you will not be able to do that. And that is basically where your strategy will come into the picture as to how you handle these 3 distinct tests of 40 minutes each. Now what happens inside these individual sections is that you will have broadly 2 types of questions that will exist. The first question type is something that we all know and we call MCQ, or multiple choice questions. In these questions, what you are expected to do is, out of the 4 options that would have been given to you, you are supposed to figure out which is the best option. Now for every correct answer that you provide, you are going to get +3, and for every answer that you get wrong, you are going to invite a penalty of 1 mark. So the marking scheme for MCQs is +3 -1. The other type of questions that are present at the CAT are something that we call theta questions, or type in the answer question types. In these questions, you will not be provided with any options. So if, say for example, your answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, then you will have to click 1, 2, 3, 4 on a virtual numerical pad, and you will have to save your answer. And that's basically how your answer will get submitted. Now, because you are not provided with options and there is no way to figure out whether you are on the right track or not, CAT does not penalize you in case you get an answer wrong for a theta question. Which means that, let's say for example, you marked the answer as 1, 2, 3, 4 and the correct answer was 1, 2, 4, 3. Even then, CAT will not penalize you for getting it wrong. But if you get it right, then you are going to get +3 marks. That's why, as a matter of convention, it is strongly advised that you attempt each and every theta question. Because at the CAT, your accuracy will not really play a role when it comes to your percentiles. So a lot of people are not aware of this, but if you get, let's say, 10 correct and 3 wrong, and you get a score of 27 marks, let's say for example, your percentile will be the same as someone else who would have got 9 correct or 27 marks. So your percentile is dependent completely on the marks that you have scored. It is not dependent on how you have scored those marks. Now moving on to the last bit, there is also a small on-screen calculator that is activated in the DILR and the quant section. So if there is a complicated question type wherein you are expected to calculate something, which happens very infrequently at the CAT, you can use this calculator in the DILR and the quant sections. Now what happens after the test? The kind of scores that are expected of you are fairly straightforward. So every year it changes depending on the kind of competition that you are dealing with, the slot in which you are taking the test, and the normalization process that takes place. Now what happens once you appear for the test and once you get your scale score is that there is a rough range that you might want to adhere to improve your chances of getting a particular percentage. So out of the 198 marks that you are going to be scored out of, what is going to happen in this particular case is, broadly it has been observed that 25% of these total marks, or somewhere around 40 marks, will take you to a 90th percentile, or 50 marks is going to take you to a 90th percentile. Similarly, if you end up getting somewhere around say 33.33 or 1/3 of the total marks, general convention suggests that you are going to end up somewhere around the 96th or the 97th percentile. And if you do manage to get a 50% or half the overall score, then there is a good chance that you are looking at a 99 to 99.5 kind of a percentage. So these are the broad ranges that you can target. At the very beginning, you will be more or less at the 25% range. You have to uplift yourself to the 33.33 or 1/3 of the total marks, and then you can again migrate to 50% or half of the total marks. That is the entire journey that we will travel during your CAT preparation, and that will translate into your score and calls from IIMs and other top institutes.